You mentioned that the government is now focusing on generating wealth. How is that bad?
Problem with wealth generation is if we look at the economic history of Singapore before 2000 and after year 2000, what is the difference? Singapore government actually controls two very important resources, people and land. Before year 2000, for example, we have very young population. During the 70s, everything was looking up. Everybody was hopeful. Everybody was very happy with how the economy was progressing and so on. Why? Because the population was young. What we were having was what we call demographic dividend. And Singapore government was actually growing the economy using this demographic dividend to generate GDP. The increasing GDP creates jobs and allows the SME to grow. So as a result, during the 70s, 80s, everybody was actually benefiting from the economic growth. And notably, as I said, two resources. One is people, the other resource is land. During the 70s and 80s, land was actually quite cheap. So land was used to support economic growth for the benefit of everybody. But by the 1990s, land prices were going up. Value of land was going up because of economic growth. After the turn of the century, what we saw was because of aging population, Singapore was actually losing the demographic dividend. There was a shift in emphasis, as I said. Instead of using demographic dividend to generate GDP, the emphasis switched to using land to generate wealth. Now, as you put it, wealth is good. It makes everybody wealthy and so on. If you get to keep the wealth, that's true. I give you an example. In late 1980s, to extract the land dividend, government actually repositioned the public housing from affordable public housing to investment asset. And by repositioning it as an investment asset, land cost was actually included in the public housing pricing. As a result, within 1 or 2 decades, housing prices went up very quickly. So it gives the people the impression that, okay, the rising prices actually create wealth. But it is true only for the first few generations of Singaporeans who bought houses before the 1980s. They benefited from the land dividend. They enjoyed the land dividend. But those who bought after that, they were actually paying very high housing costs for the public housing. So all the savings in the CPF get transferred to HDB to pay for the high land cost. So you have a house as of growing value. You will not be able to realize it until you sell it. And the worst thing is that there's a lease expiry. You have a 99-year lease. Your wealth is actually declining year after year. Think that you're benefiting from the wealth generation, you are not. That's high housing cost. Another aspect is the year 2000, all the malls and commercial industrial properties were actually purchased over by what we call real estate investment trusts. And because they monopolize the supply, they push up the renters. Eventually, the high renters had to be transferred to the consumer, resulting in high living costs. So now what we see in Singapore is a high housing cost, high living costs, and so on. So wealth generation, yes, but the question is who actually benefit from the wealth generation. Because of the public housing, wealth is being transferred from a household to the state because of the high land costs in the public housing. If you really look at it, wealth generation only benefits a small portion of people, and the rest of people, they actually suffer because of wealth generation in terms of high housing costs, high living costs, and so on.
Thank you for watching the video. As we still have many inspirations to share with you, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can be up to date with what we are doing. You may also like to share this video with your family and friends so that we can stand together and help Singapore progress with compassion.